Hello engravers, this is another video in our series on the Engraving Challenge for June 2020. We are looking at Beech's Romance, and this is an edition by Scott Stephen Hansen. Here we have the piano part and the violin part. First thing I would say, just on the title page, it's a little bit unclear as to some of the hierarchy issues. You would definitely want to have the title to be the largest piece of text on the page. Also, the Opus 23 should probably be smaller underneath, because that's not part of the title. It's a separate thing. So probably put Opus 23 down here. And then Amy Beech should definitely be larger, because those are the two most important things. What is the piece and who wrote it? And a dedication, if you are going to put it on the title page, it should definitely be in italics, because that's a tradition that dedications are always in italics. And then you should probably put it above, like right there. But, you know, your mileage may vary on that one. The biggest thing that jumps out to me is the piano is far too large. All right, looking at the actual score now. Here again, this is probably not necessary, these headers here, because it's obvious what's going on. It's the piano part, so you can remove those. The headers up here are not going to be useful. So this goes up to 9 pages, starts on page 2 and then goes to 9, which mimics what the original had. And this uses a pretty nice, it definitely modernizes certain aspects of the notation, but definitely because of this choice of font, it definitely feels more historical. This was a score that was done in Finale with the bravura derivative for that program. So there's definitely some Finale isms that we'll talk about here that happen here and there. Couple things that just would apply globally. I think this is far too large, and the font is a little bit wonky here. That might just be part of the font where the numbers are not all the same size. It's a very old-timey feel. And then the other thing I was going to say is these rehearsal marks, just toss them. They're not going to be useful in a chamber context like this. It's fine in a band score or an orchestral score, but not here. When you have your measure numbers on every system, there's no need for these. They're not actually helpful. All right, so let's look at our sizes, as we always do. We have 7 millimeters here and 5 millimeters here. Perfectly fine. Careful of this. This is not centered on the staff. See that? That needs to be centered. So in terms of modernizing the notation, for example, this edition splits the 3/8 right at the front and does that everywhere it happens. It also splits any syncopations going across the middle of the bar. It's a legitimate decision to make. And it's also splitting things like these dotted quarters across the middle of the bar. Splits a beam there, splits the beam here. We'll see how it goes as we go further down. So I'm not going to repeat myself with a lot of the other videos, because it's a lot of the same things that I'm seeing right off the front here. These slurs, they need to get right into get it note head to note head. Most of this looks okay. Some of these stems are a little bit too long, like right here. These could be reduced when they have the flags pointing down. Those feel way too long. And some of these ties could definitely use cleaning up. You want to have these to be the same shape wherever possible. So you see that one happening right here. Here's a really good example of that, where all three ties are a different shape, and that's what you want to avoid. So you want to get this kind of like that. So they're all roughly the same shape. This may be a setting thing, but I can see your stems, whenever there's a flag on them, seem to be abnormally long, and these are actually too short. It needs to hit right to the end of that line there, because that's where the D, an octave above. If you should, the stem always needs to be at least an octave long, so it needs to hit that line of the D. Here it goes too far, and that might be because of the way the settings are with your flags or something like that, or the flag font is kind of funny, so be careful of that. And I would adjust them probably throughout. This is not going to fly. If you have a down stem note like that, you can't put your slur underneath. If you're going to have any down stems, then your slur must go above. And also, I would say right here, you need a little bit more space in there. I think that when you have this overlapping thing, you should at least see a sliver of white space in between those two. All right, I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to go through every single little detail of all the ties and the slurs, because I've mentioned that in several of the other videos at this point. Again, you got to be consistent with your stems here. Right? These are way too long. Almost a full space too long. This one's very long. That looks very silly. And I don't know why this half rest symbol looks so funny. Like it doesn't have enough give on either side, so that's a subtle thing. And then this needs to come down so it's actually sitting on the top line there. One thing I do want to point out, and this is something we haven't actually seen yet, this little phrase here is actually in the bass clef. It was originally on the top, and almost everyone we've seen has kept it up on the top staff. But this has actually been put down here, and I think that's totally fine. I guess the implied thing is that this is the right hand. You know, whether that would be done with the right hand or the left hand doesn't matter that much. You know, the original didn't prescribe. So I understand why this is missing here. There should be a whole rest here, because the implication is that right hand goes down here. But if you're actually going to remove the rest, then you need to actually say like that. And if you really want, you can put one of those dotted lines or something to say that, to show that it changes. But I wouldn't be that prescriptive. I would just put the whole rest and let the pianist decide what they think is best. And right here again, this needs to get up into the staff, so it's sitting on that bottom line, and probably bring this rest in one notch or two as well. Okay. Be careful of your hairpins here. That should not be happening, where it's actually hitting the line. It's got to come just short of it. And also, because this stem is so long, it's being pushed down. And really, it should be coming up a bit. All right. I think this is all fine in treble clef. You know, it's an E. It's not that high, or sorry, it's not that low in the grand scheme of things. That's pretty normal for treble clef these days. All right, this is good. This is probably the best way to do this, except it just needs to be, you need to add more spacing in there. And again, some of these stems, they're way too long. Just need to nudge that B over a little bit more. And here you got your slurs on the wrong side. There we go. I would say, apart from like the typical things with the slurs being closer to the note heads, the slurs in general seem quite flat. I would give them a bit more curve to them. You know, like right here, see how by the time it hits this stem here, it's really flat. Like really get it up there so that it's clearly pointing to that note. It looks like you're not doing 4/8 across. I mean, you can choose to do that. I would think that it would be better to do it, though. In 4/4, it makes eighth notes, continuous eighth notes, much easier to parse. So like right here, right here, right here, right here, all of those could be connected together. All right, let's look here. Another thing, adjustment I would make is definitely make your ties and slurs match better. There's things with the geometry there that are not matching at all. It seems like the ties are much thinner and their ends, their tips are much, much thinner than the slurs. So I would adjust your settings to make your ties a bit thicker, make them match more. All right. You can see like right here, this looks really disconcerting with the two different thicknesses at the same time when they really should be matching pretty close. Probably would get these up closer. Let's get them out of the way. See again here, do 4/8 there. Same in here in the violin part. Or here. Yeah, you get the point. This one I would probably get it closer, or do it stems up and then do it under. Either way. This one could use a bit more room there. This is good. This is the whole note. That's good. You just need more room there. Just a little sliver of extra room in there. Okay, next page. So now we're getting into this portato section, and this is where I think the 4/8 going straight through would definitely shine better. You know, because these are already grouped as 4s anyway. Then you don't have all this jumping around of the stems either. Right, so you'd have all of those under. These you could go either way, so do these down there. Just cleans things up quite a bit. Makes it easier to see where the groups are. Here, be careful your dynamics are not quite centered. Not sure about using such a small 8 line there. You could probably put that up and it'd be just fine. This guy here is not going to fly. I see what you were trying to do, but it's not going to fly. This distance is not great enough. So it makes this stem too short, and then you have these acute angles here, which look really ugly. I would avoid that. And this guy needs to get that slur right in there. All right. Like I said, I'm not going to comment on every tiny little thing. That looks like a mistake there. It should probably be a pew like that, right? Accent. All right, let's keep going. Nothing we haven't already talked about. This is good. I will say that the staff spacing in general is pretty good. I like how everything's rather condensed vertically. I think that's quite nice. It makes it easier to read. I would say this one is not that, though. You could definitely condense this one. This alignment here, there's no need for that. You can move these up because those dynamics have nothing to do with each other. And I would pull this entire thing up. And looks like you made the editorial choice not to extend this slur all the way down. I mean, I would. And then be careful of your threes. I would actually change the font for these threes. They need to be a little bit larger and more conspicuous. They're kind of just fading into the background, and they kind of look like fingering numbers because they're bold and tiny. So I would make those a bit bigger, for sure. Bigger, no bold with italics. All right. This is fine. I mean, it's the same issues we've talked about with other entries with these slurs. Get them right down into there. And you're continuing threes all the way through. Okay, so that's one way to do it, is to continue the threes all the way until the threes stop here. Here, adjust this beam here. Try and get rid of these wedges. These wedges. So that means extending these stems just a little bit. Try your best on that. I'm not sure if that's reasonable in that particular case. Okay, now we're in the sostenuto here. Next section. It's a little bit of an awkward break. Like, I would say it's better to break here so the ties don't go over the break like that. It's not the end of the world, but I think you have the room to do that, so might as well. This doesn't really make sense to me here. You're going up to the B in bass clef, but then you're going up to the same B in treble clef. So that's inconsistent. You got to choose one or the other. If you're going to go all bass clef, then get rid of these. All right, this is good. Nice use of sol D and sol G there with the parentheses on the next line, and the same parentheses down here in the next line. That's very nice. Nice touch. All right, same rest issue. Get it up above the line there. Same there. And that's a little bit too long there. That arpeggio, it only needs to squiggle up to the bottom note. Again, here with the 4 notes, the 4/8 tied together, I would definitely do that all the way through this whole thing. Poker writ and a tempo are large. That's good. That's very good to see. Here's a real subtle thing. So I'm going to say this pianissimo needs to move over. It needs to be, the left edge of it needs to be the left edge of the starting note. And then your dolce or dolcissimo needs to go right next to it. Now that's going to be easier here because this slur is supposed to be up top because you've got a stem down here. So ultimately this dolcissimo will move over a bit. And then there you align the bass line between the two, and then that's how you have one thought. All right, let's keep going. We're on page 7 now. Again, more of the same with the 8th notes. It's still very readable. I don't want to harp too much about it. I like this this use of the triplets here. What I don't like here is this trill. I would definitely do something like this where you have a separate trill for each because they're different notes. All right, triplets are very good, and then the triplets keep going down here while they're not up here, which that's a good way to do that. This is not going to fly, whatever's going on there. I see that you're trying to show that this carries all the way over, but that's not actually what was here. It was originally a quarter tied to an 8, right? So it only lasts for this duration of this chord, and then there's a restrike here. So this the F half note doesn't really make sense there. So I would rethink that. Okay, now we're back in triplet land. Triplets all the way through. Again, you got a few more wedges here. See what you can do on that. So see like this where it's straddling the middle line like that. That's wonderful. That looks really nice. You just definitely want to try and avoid those kind of wedge situations there. All right. So it looks like we're committing to the triplets. Okay. We'll see if that becomes a problem later. There are ways to do it without it becoming a problem. My biggest issue with this sort of thing is it does just become clutter. Because the triplet feeling does not change after this point. Right? So I would think starting at 95, I would remove the triplet markings altogether. It's just going to stay triplets all the way to the end. This is good. Rit, molto, and then a tempo. Very nice. Some people didn't catch that was a rit molto. Also, all your stem directions are correct here, looks like. Yeah. The only trick here, though, is when your stem's up like this, you actually don't want these to be full length. And that's the trick. It should only be about a 1/6. So that it's not looking goofy, where this one is a very long stem. So maybe just about there. But they would all be flat. Flat definitely is the way to go. See, like here it's done properly where it's a shorter stem. Okay, now we're at the ending section with the triplet tune. That's good. This is clever where the line just descends into sempre con pedale. That's kind of nice. Yeah, so here's where the triplets really become a problem because they get in the way of all this hairpins. So if you didn't have those triplets there, this wouldn't be an issue, but be careful. Really subtle thing here is even though this is a lower voice, I would still pull that down 1 notch just to show that it's a lower voice. And as a result, I'd probably pull all these up 1 notch, but you know, you could get away with not doing that. And probably pull these down too, certainly by this section. And then some of these you need to not be flat, like right here. That should not be flat. There's no reason for that to be flat because there isn't the same chord over and over. So and this is copying the cross staff. I think that's fine. Right here, we've talked about that before. 16th notes. Sempre poco a poco written. Nice use of written here. That's very nice. Very nice portato here. The niente, not really a fan of that one. Yeah, this is great. All right, let's have a look at the violin part. As always, all the normal things apply. You know, all the slur stuff and all that. Let's check on our size here. Let me do that again. Yeah. It's not quite 7. It's like 6 2/3 maybe. 6 3/4. So it's not quite 7. I can kind of tell. Maybe it is 7, but it feels very loose. And part of that is the smaller staff size. And then another part of that is the margins are actually a little bit large, I find, on the left and the right. I don't know if I can reliably get a reading there. Yeah, 19. Yeah, they're not overly large, but they're large enough that I can tell the difference here. So the biggest thing I can say about this is horizontally it feels very dense, while vertically it doesn't, and that's not a great look. because all that means is you're forcing it to be too crunched together when it doesn't need to be. So let's just count up what we have here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 systems over 2 pages. You could bump that all the way up to 24 if you needed to, especially at this size. So what I would definitely recommend is just give everything a bit of breathing room and add two or three more systems here, so that you can have 10 and 11 or 11 and 11, something like that. So, like, for example, I'm just going to give some examples of where I would break these things. Start right here, because this is a new phrase, right? And give this multi-rest a bit more room to work with. Then I'd probably break it right here. That's a horrible symbol. Let me do that again. And then at that point, probably right here. I'm not sure after that. Definitely would break it right here. Right here. You don't have to worry about a page turn in here because it's just a 2-3 page. Your house style will obviously vary if you're required to put the page 2 here. That depends on your publisher or your house style. Like I said about the rehearsal marks, they're not needed in a chamber context like this. I don't think these are needed either. These multi-rest numbers, they're very useful in large ensemble situations and like musical theater and stuff, but in a chamber group, I don't think that's needed at all. It's just more symbols for no real gain. I like that you matched the octave lines with your piano score. I think that's good. I just think that you could use the octave lines a bit more consistently. What it seems to be is that anytime you're going above high G, you want to use an octave line, which is a bit of an arbitrary thing, especially since right here you're going up to high B as written. So I think this piece, there's only one section that like I would absolutely use an octave line, and that's right here, and you already have one with this high D, which is the highest note in the piece at 96. That's the only section where I would say totally, absolutely, you should probably use an octave line there. But some people have not even used it there either. But like in this ending here, in these trills, especially right here, this is a kind of an awkward spot. I don't think the octave line is actually helping at all. It's just not high enough, right? So I would definitely give that some thought, especially things like this. You really want to avoid things like this, where this is just a stepwise motion, right? And this are the same note in the same bar, and yet they look completely different. So that's what you want to avoid with these octave lines, because this high A, that's nothing for violins. They can totally read that. So like this one I would get rid of. Just write it up as it is. Same here. Like this is not high enough. It's one high note, and then the rest are just pretty well normal. It's only 2 ledger lines. 2 or 3 ledger lines. Again, here, those are not the same note. They look like they are, but they're not. So avoid that sort of thing with octave lines. All right. I think that's the extent of what I have to say on this piece. One more thing. That's not going to fly either. One measures should never be a multi-rest. That must be a normal rest like that, and just get rid of this. Yeah, same here. Make that a whole rest. That might be a finale setting that was overlooked. Who knows? All right. I think that's all we're going to talk about on this one. I think overall this is a pretty darn good edition with just some tweaks. Definitely has some, polish that could be added. And that's just a matter of putting some time in with these stem lengths and the ties and the slurs. But I think this is definitely a solid edition. Lot of things done well. So thank you for submitting, and we will see you in the next one.